You don't need me to tell you just how dangerous and skillful Mossad is. So now imagine just how incredible the most legendary spy ever to work for them was. This is the story of Eli Cohen, Israel and Mossad's greatest spy ever. Eli Cohen was a Mizrahi Jew, born in Alexandria, Egypt, in 1924. He grew up speaking Arabic and was immersed in Arab culture, which would be very handy in the future. Though an exceptionally bright student, Eli was harassed at his university by the Muslim Brotherhood movement. Deeply committed to Judaism, he considered becoming a rabbi, but the government closed the Jewish religious school in Alexandria, prompting him to pursue higher education in Cairo University. He became fluent in 5 languages: Arabic, Hebrew, English, French, and Spanish. Then, in 1947, he was drafted into the army but kicked out because his loyalty was considered suspect due to Cohen's Jewish faith. Due to all this discrimination, Cohen became a very committed Zionist. He believed that Jews had no proper home anywhere but in the land of Israel. Nonetheless, Eli stayed behind when his parents and 3 brothers immigrated to Israel, finishing his studies and organizing Zionist activities among Jewish Egyptians. Prior to the 1952 Egyptian Revolution, he was arrested and interrogated by Egyptian authorities, who were becoming suspicious of his activities, but that didn't deter him, and he continued to engage in various Israeli covert efforts in which the Egyptian government could never prove his involvement. First contacted by Israeli intelligence in the early 1950s, his friend Shmuel Azar, who was working for the top-secret Unit 131 of Israeli military intelligence at the time, asked him for assistance renting an apartment in Cairo. Cohen agreed, but otherwise he didn't work with that unit and did not contact them again. However, it was the beginning of a very productive relationship with Israeli intelligence. Azar and his cell in Cairo were involved in one of the most catastrophic failed operations in Israeli intelligence history, Operation Susanna, an incident later known as the Lavon Affair. It was a false flag operation, where they were meant to plant bombs inside Egyptian, American, and British-owned civilian targets, then have them blamed on the Muslim Brotherhood and Egyptian communists. However, the authorities captured and dealt with the perpetrators. Cohen was investigated due to his connection with the cell. He underwent traumatic investigations. However, the Egyptian intelligence services, known as Mukhabarat, determined that aside from renting the apartment, he had no connection to the plot. He was released. However, that did not deter Cohen from working for Israel. Between 1954 and 1956, he participated in Operation Goshen, which aimed to help the endangered Jewish population of Egypt immigrate to Israel. Eventually, it became too dangerous for him to remain in the country. The Ministry of Interior withdrew his documents, and the Jewish agency rescued him from the country in a daring escape by sea to Naples. From there, he finally came to Israel. With his Arabic and experience working behind enemy lines, Cohen was an attractive asset to Mossad, the Israeli Foreign Intelligence Service, but they had their doubts about him. An internal report from military intelligence back when he served in Egypt determined that Cohen had a high IQ, great bravery, a phenomenal memory, and the ability to keep a secret. But the tests also showed that, despite his modest appearance, he has an exaggerated sense of self-importance and a lot of internal tension. Cohen, the results indicated, does not always evaluate danger correctly and is liable to assume risks beyond those which are necessary. So, in the meantime, he lived an everyday life in the suburbs of Bat Yam, just south of Tel Aviv, with his new wife, Nadia Majald. He started working as a filing clerk in an insurance office. That hardly seems more interesting, but I'm sure he had his reasons. In the meantime, Nadia and Eli had children too. But in 1960, tensions between Israel and Syria reached a fever pitch. Israel's enemies to the north were building up their military presence on the Golan Heights and firing into Israeli villages below. Even worse, they had begun to plan to divert water going into the Sea of Galilee, the primary source of irrigation and drinking water for much of the country. Syria had emerged as a bigger threat than ever before, so the Mossad set out to find an intelligence officer to infiltrate the Syrian government. Director of the intelligence agency, Meir Amit, eventually came across Eli's name while looking through the agency's files of rejected candidates after none of the current candidates seemed suitable for the job. For the next 2 weeks, Cohen was put under surveillance and found suitable for recruitment and training. By then, Cohen had lost interest in the highs and lows of espionage, but having lost his job as an accountant around that time, he took them up on the offer. Cohen knew Arabic and French, Syria's 2 most commonly spoken languages. However, the cultures and dialects of Syria and Egypt are quite different. Therefore, he still required 6 months of intense training from the Mossad and their Mizrahi Jewish specialists in Arab culture. After the 6 months of intensive training, the Mossad determined that he had all the skills needed to become a model field agent. The stage was set for an incredibly daring mission behind enemy lines. The Mossad created a new identity for him. His new name was Kamal Amin Ta'abet. This made-up individual was from a Syrian family, but was born in Beirut. The cover story was that his family had moved to Buenos Aires and opened a successful textile business, but he now wanted to fulfill a lifelong dream of returning to Syria. In Buenos Aires, he became very popular among the many Syrian émigrés. He enjoyed the nightlife and made contact with all the movers and shakers in that community, eventually contacting the staff of the Syrian embassy. Among those he met and impressed was Colonel Amin al-Hafiz, who greatly influenced the up-and-coming Ba'ath Party. The plan was brilliant, because instead of trying to enter Syria, Cohen was invited to come. Many wanted to take advantage of the wealth they believed he possessed and offered him the chance to make investments and visit the country. The Mossad had also made a very good bet on the Ba'ath Party winning elections. In 1961, when Cohen had started his mission, that organization was banned in Syria, but the Mossad believed they would eventually take over and, therefore, encouraged Cohen to spend time and resources cultivating a relationship with those that were sympathetic to them. He briefly returned to Israel in 1961 to see his family, but he also spent time perfecting his cover and preparing for the operation of working behind enemy lines. The Israeli intelligence services were shocked at how well the spy had done. Claiming to be Kamal Amin Ta'abet, the Israeli spy entered Syria in February 1962. Luckily for him, the Ba'ath Party took power, and his well-cultivated ties with them paid off handsomely. He became a playboy in Damascus, using the money Israel provided to host lavish parties for the Syrian government elite. There, he would supply generous amounts of alcohol and organize liaisons between powerful officials and the most desirable women in the country, including singers, actresses, and socialites. While others got drunk, Cohen would pretend to drink and listen attentively to the conversations. As you might expect, they revealed far more than they should have. Cohen also engaged in romances with several women from influential families in Syria, perhaps as many as 17. His handlers hoped to obtain more information by cultivating these relationships and a path out of the country if things went south. The elaborate cover in these relationships worked. One official he befriended was George Saif of the Information Ministry. Cohen would sometimes sit in the ministry reading files. If anyone questioned that practice, Saif would vouch for his false friend. The amount of information Cohen gleaned this way was incredibly impressive. Cohen kept in contact with Israel frequently and delivered information through a radio hidden in his room. He also managed to visit Israel occasionally and see his family, as Eli did in 1962 and 1965. Nadia believed her beloved husband had a safe job for the defense ministry the whole time. In 1964, Syria began to act on its long-standing plans to divert the waters of the Jordan River away from the Sea of Galilee. They started a project to divert the Banyas River, a tributary of the Jordan. But thanks to the info provided by Cohen, the Israeli Air Force bombed the dig site and destroyed the bulldozers involved. The Syrians gave up on the plan, much to the relief of the Israeli government. Cohen also located Alois Brunner, a German war official guilty of atrocities whom Israel was trying to hunt down. He had found shelter in Syria under the fake identity of Dr. Georg Fischer. The Mossad tried to kill him by sending letter bombs to Brunner's house, but that only lost him an eye. His biggest coup came when he was invited to visit the Golan Heights. That area was primarily a closed military zone, but he managed to get there 3 times and was shown around by the most senior staff. There are some well-known photographs of him from there, looking out into Israel. The spy also advised the Syrians to plant trees near the positions to deceive the Israelis into thinking those areas were not occupied and provide shade for the soldiers on the heights. The Syrian generals thought that was a great idea, and it helped Israel locate the enemy. What the spy discovered in the Golan Heights was a far better and deeper line of defense than originally expected. He saw that rather than operating a single line of defense, there were 3 connected layers of positions. Cohen did his best to memorize the locations of the guns, trenches, machine gun nests, and tank traps. He did a phenomenal job because this eventually helped the IDF take the heights quickly and with few casualties in the 1967 war. Despite everything, by 1964, Cohen felt that he was going to get caught. The problem was that the newly appointed commander of Syrian intelligence following the 1963 coup, Colonel Ahmed Swidani, disliked and suspected him. He didn't trust figures close to the Second Syrian Republic. Therefore, when visiting home in November 1964, Eli asked to stay, but the Mossad insisted he go back for one more round of information gathering. What he had given so far proved so valuable that they wanted more. Upon returning, Cohen grew increasingly careless. He started broadcasting every day and did so consistently at the same time, 8:30 a.m. It was simply too predictable. It isn't clear if he grew too confident or if there was a desire to get caught at play. Perhaps the latter makes more sense since he knew Syrian intelligence was suspicious. Sometimes, spies who have been undercover for too long develop self-sabotaging tendencies. The Soviet and Syrian intelligence officers in the country were very concerned about all the intelligence leaking from the government. They began to track radio broadcasts and triangulated one of them to Cohen's home. On January 24, 1965, the Syrians broke into his house and caught him in the middle of a transmission to Israel. You can guess what came next. Cohen was severely tortured but did not break. His courage and Mossad training held out. Meanwhile, Israel staged a massive international campaign for clemency, hoping to persuade Syria to not execute him. Several governments tried to get Syria to rescind the death sentence, and even Pope Paul VI tried his hand, but to no avail. After a show trial, the captured spy was hanged on May 18, 1965. But he did not die in vain. 2 years later, Israel went to war against Syria and took over the entire Golan Heights in 2 days. That secured the villages in the north from Syrian shelling and protected the water supply into the Sea of Galilee, all with very few casualties. Cohen is considered a major hero in Israel, and the state owes him a great debt for his service. Many streets and neighborhoods have been named for him. However, to this day, Cohen's body has never been released by Syria, keeping the remains of the spy who did inconceivable damage to them. Thank you for watching and subscribe for more content just like this. I'll see you in the next one.